All right, our third topic for today is the Cowboys piece of this. And obviously, we're going to see the Cowboys here in a couple of days, and there's going to be referendums issued on the Cowboys defense, on what the Cowboys look like without Micah Parsons as part of the equation. That's part of the deal when you trade away a player like this. And I think the way that you want to look at this again is from a big picture standpoint. What does this look like for the Dallas Cowboys organizationally? And the reality is that this is way, way, way out of character for Jerry Jones. He last traded a player of this magnitude in 1989, and that was, yes, the Herschel Walker trade. Since then, you cannot find another example of Jerry Jones trading away a star in his prime. It just does not happen. They've taken big swings to bring in stars. Guys going back to guys like Joey Galloway, trading for Charles Haley back in the day. Roy Williams was a big time trade when it happened. So we've seen them trade to bring in guys, Amari Cooper. We've seen them trade to bring in guys, big stars from other teams. But they rarely let stars go, and they do not trade stars away. It has not happened since Herschel Walker. So what does it signify? To me, it signifies what happened when Micah Parsons didn't take the offer the Cowboys put on the table in April. It signifies the discussions that were happening inside that organization and the questions that they started asking themselves after Micah decided not to take the deal that the Cowboys put in front of him. And those conversations were about, what do we want to be going forward? How do we break free of this? We're a really good 10, 11, 12 win team that makes the playoffs but doesn't go anywhere when we get there. How do we break through that glass ceiling? Because what we're doing isn't necessarily working. It's not broken, but it's also not working at the level you'd like it to work. They have the third longest drought, conference championship game drought in the NFL. They have not been to a conference championship game in 29 years. Only two franchises have gone longer. One's the Dolphins. The other one's the Browns, which this iteration of the Browns has only existed since 1999. Now they obviously carry over the history from the previous Browns, but the Browns that were around before that started the streak, are actually the Ravens now. So it's remarkable that the Cowboys are top 10 over that period in wins, and yet they have the third longest conference title game drought. So how do you break through? How do you change the dynamic if you're the Cowboys? Those are the sorts of conversations that they had when Micah Parsons walked away from the deal that they offered back in April. And the result of those conversations was, let's try to lean into our head coach. Let's try to see if we can do a better job of balancing out our roster. Let's see what happens if we try to change the dynamic in our locker room a little bit and empower some of the better leaders on our team, guys like Dak Prescott. And that didn't mean that they were completely out on the idea of bringing back Micah Parsons, but it was a discussion that they had where it's like, if we have to trade Micah Parsons, here's what we're looking at. Here's what we might want to do. Here's kind of the plan going forward for the next 5 years. And like, if we can, in Brian Schottenheimer's words, find a way to build the greatest culture in professional sports, which is what Brian Schottenheimer has said his goal is, like, how do we get there? Because you can't just get there with a coach standing in front of the room. That has to be owned by the players as well. So they get the 2 first-round picks for Micah Parsons, which is obviously a huge part of the deal. And having 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years gives them great flexibility, a great opportunity, as well as they've drafted. The Cowboys have been excellent in that area over the years. That gives them a chance to get younger and to reset and to really stock the roster with a ton of flexibility over the next 2 years of drafts. But the other thing they did is they asked for one player, and that player was Kenny Clark. And that's no mistake. That's symbolic of what they're trying to do here. Kenny Clark is a great pro. Kenny Clark is a great player. Kenny Clark is a great leader. And I can tell you that because I can tell you that the staff in Green Bay was excited to bring Micah Parsons in, but they were heartbroken that Kenny Clark had to be a part of the deal. And it killed those guys to hear that Kenny was outgoing. Now, obviously, Obviously, you understand that it's going to cost you something to get a player like Micah Parsons. So that's just business in the NFL. But in sending Kenny Clark out the door, there were a lot of people that were disappointed to see him go. And I think that that really illustrates what the Cowboys are looking to bring into their organization now. So now they're able to lean more in on Dak Prescott as a leader, lean more in on CeeDee Lamb as a leader, lean more in on those guys and empower those guys and send the message to the locker room that those guys are now the leaders of the team. And we're going to have a singular philosophy. We're going to have a singular direction here. It's behind Brian Schottenheimer. And again, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, because I think that big picture thinking doesn't happen if Micah Parsons takes the deal that's on the table in April. So it's a very interesting subplot and where this goes. And to that end, I'm going to be interested to see the effort and the energy on Thursday, because that's where you have to start when you're talking about building what Brian Schottenheimer wants to build, is the effort and the energy at a really high level against an obviously loaded Philadelphia team, the defending world champs. Can't wait to see what that looks like on Thursday night.